was that it was sort of started by the U.S. military. The sort of concepts of cybernetics came from a Jewish immigrant called Norbert Wiener. These were systematized by a fellow named John Licklider, who was working with what at the time was called the Advanced Research Projects Office of the Department of Defense of the U.S. military. Now this is kind of true because there's many other things going on. One of the more interesting tidbits, which is not terribly well known, I don't know if we have any closet communists in the room, but during the sort of Russian Revolution, there was a large fight between Lenin, who was known as the leader of the Bolsheviks, and one of his rivals for power, who, this is 1905-4, who was called Alexander Bogdanov. Now Bogdanov is not well known outside Russia, primarily because his ideas and his memory were systematically eliminated by Lenin and Stalin. It was actually illegal in Russia to study Bogdanov. But Bogdanov is very interesting because Bogdanov had a critique of socialism, which Lenin proceeded to kill the critique. The critique was very interesting. The critique basically said that the working class, it doesn't matter if they own the factories, they own the government, who owns whatever. That's not the important thing. The important thing is, do you have the collective knowledge or the collective intelligence to actually run the cycles of distribution and consumption and production? And in order to do this, what Bogdanov realized is we needed some sort of way to both share information and have a sort of universal, what he called organization science, which he called techtology. The book was published in Russian, and then the Norbert Wiener, who was a Russian immigrant at MIT, read the book. He was a German-Russian immigrant, could read Russian, read the book, and then mathematized it. So many of the key concepts actually around cybernetics, which eventually lead to the internet, did actually come from a moment of revolutionary struggle in Russia, of all places. Now, what was happening is during the 60s, there was this a fellow who, I don't know if anyone, he's also kind of written out history books rather, unfortunately, or he's written in a very silly way. A fellow named Douglas Engelbart. And Douglas Engelbart was probably, was a really normal guy. He was sort of an engineer, he had a wife, he had a kid, he had a decent job. And then one day he's driving back from work to his home, and he has a massive existential crisis. Sort of something of a sort of Jean-Paul Sartre sort of variety, where he just has to pull the car over, breaks down on the side of the road, because he realizes his life is over. He's only 25, he already has a wife and kids, and a steady job, the work's not very exciting, involves electronics, but it's not particularly, he didn't feel like it was contributing anything to humanity. So as an engineer, he sat down and he said, well, I would like to make the world better for humanity. But I don't know how, and I have a very limited skill set. I'm an engineer. But he said that what he sort of noticed was that the problems facing the world in the 1950s, this is right after World War II, are quite scary, particularly the vision of nuclear war, and the visions of even some of the early visions of sort of ecological and social collapse were coming out during this period, such that Douglas Engelbart